Welcome to Carrying Connected Conversations. I'm Sydney, a spiritual mentor who guides and supports you to live in alignment by finding and owning your power.
I'm Angie, a fitness and life coach, teaching you to love yourself unconditionally by staying accountable to your goals in fitness, food, life, and love. Syd and I are real-life BFFs and biz partners. Our deepest desire is to see you succeed in life by being willing and vulnerable to step out of your comfort zone.
We're constantly learning from each other while also providing support through every breakdown and every breakthrough. Not every conversation is easy. It's the difficult ones that lead you to create deeper connections in your life.
We want to inspire and empower you to love your life. So get ready for conversations filled with laughter, tears, and everything in between. Let's get connecting.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Carrying Connected Conversations. This is Angie chatting at you for episode 110. And today we are just going to go with the flow of conversation because Syd and I, we were chatting for quite a bit before we hit that record button. And we're so excited to kind of continue on that conversation. So before I introduce Syd, a few episodes ago, Syd talked about how she was manifesting a new car. Well, this car is currently in her life, and we want to kind of chat of the meaning behind what a car means to us, because I have my own values and my own reasonings and my own things in terms of what a car means to me. Same with Syd. And I heard a little bit of Syd and I was like, Syd, stop talking. We have to share this on the podcast because it's so true. So without further ado, let's jump into the conversation. Syd, how are you doing today, my friend?
Hello. I'm doing really well. A little chilly, to be honest, but I'm doing really well. And I'm excited to chat about this. And I think it's just a reminder for everyone. When we're like manifesting something or we're calling something in or we're looking at the idea of success or fulfillment or anything really, we have to get clear on what it means to us, the individual. What is my value on this word, on this thing, on this life? Where are my values and what's important to me? And ultimately, I think that's what connects us to our soul path and our soul purpose and the reason that we are here. So it's funny because that sounds really deep. And then we're going to jump in and we're going to talk about our cars, which sounds very materialistic. But I think when we actually discuss the value behind it and the meaning, individual meaning behind it for each of us, it's going to make a lot more sense on, it's not actually a materialistic desire. It's not an ego need. It is very much a soul need because of that value that we carry on what a car means to us.
Yes, agreed. So let's jump right in. Would you like to start or would you like me to start? I feel like you should start because you already started talking about it. So I think getting our listeners and our watchers kind of caught up to our conversation and then continue on from there. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that sounds good. I'm very forgetful. My ajna, my head is open in human design. And so if you know anything about human design, which we talk about it almost in every single episode because it's helped me learn so much about myself. But it basically means that like ideas, thoughts, words like go in one ear and then out the other. Like I can forget something in an instant. Like, and there's even times where I'll be saying something and you'll be like, wait, what did you say? Can you repeat that? And I'll be like, I have no idea what I just said. So I will try and kind of start this up with where I'd left off in our private conversation. So I was talking about my car. I got a new car. If you guys haven't, I think there's been 2 episodes already where I talked about it. The first episode, I kind of explained a lot of the fears that I have been releasing and healing in the process of manifesting a car. And then the second time that we talked about it on the podcast, I shared that I manifested my dream car and it came into my life in such a beautiful way. So yeah, I am sitting in my car right now, recording this episode. And to me, there's a lot of meaning that comes with having a vehicle And I can talk about it in terms of, the financial meaning of owning my own vehicle and having that sense of financial freedom, right? The vehicle that I had before this one, I was leasing. So I had very large monthly payments. And even after the 5 years, I still didn't own the vehicle. If I wanted to own it, I would have to finance it or pay a large sum in order to buy it. And this vehicle I own outright. And I think that, to me, that releases a lot of stress. It helps me to not worry as much about my future and whether or not I'll be able to pay my monthly payments for my vehicle, because starting a business is extremely challenging in many different ways. And I think if you talk to any entrepreneur, one of the most challenging ways or things that we experience is the uncertainty of our revenue and our income. You don't have someone paying your check every single month, or biweekly, however often you get paid. And so having a vehicle that cost quite a bit of money, that was always a challenge for me in battling my money worries and my money fears. So owning this vehicle outright puts me in a position where I'm not manifesting money just to get by every month. I'm manifesting money to start saving for my future and to start setting myself up for the home that I want to buy one day and the land that I want to live on one day. And for me, sitting in my vehicle, it not only gives me this sense of financial freedom, it really just gives me this sense of freedom. Like I can go wherever I want to go at any time, especially because I work for myself. So I don't have to be somewhere to do my job. And I was sitting in my car the other day. I went to the park to to go for a walk, and I brought my work with me. And I crawled into the back seat of my car. Because it was kind of cold outside. So after I was finished my walk, I wanted just the comforts of being in shelter, I guess you could say, in order to do some work. And I actually didn't end up doing any work because there was this feeling of nostalgia that moved through me. And it really was, I was going to say it was like deja vu, but it wasn't like deja vu because it actually did remind me of a moment that I'd already lived and I'd already experienced. And for me, not going anywhere, but being able to just sit in my car and have my own space. And for me, this feeling of freedom, financial freedom, and freedom to travel and go and explore, it inspires me. It inspires my soul. So I can show up in my work and I can carry that sense of freedom in what I do, whether I'm working with a one-on-one client or I'm writing. And I don't know what else to say right now, but I think that's really what it is. My car it values this sense of freedom that gives me so much inspiration and so much motivation to continue to move forward in life.
Yeah. And honestly, I would have to agree with you, because even how I think of my vehicle, this is the first time that I've ever so let me rewind. So every time I've had a vehicle, it's always been, like $2-3 drop it here. It'll last 2-3 years. My rule of thumb is $1,000 a year. however many thousands of dollars it is, that's how many years it'll spend. Anything on top of that, bonus, that means it's great. So this is the first time, the car that I had purchased last year, where I financed a used vehicle. And I know that sounds a little weird, but I wanted to own it, that was comfortable within my means, because I've always, dropped a couple thousand, had a vehicle, but I was annoyed. I was annoyed with always having to, fix the catalytic converter, the fuel pump, the something, always something was falling. And then it was more money ending up being spent in the long run. So I'm like, I need something that's reliable, but I don't need top of the line. Like, I don't want brand new. I don't want to jump into a commitment for so many years. Cause again, being an entrepreneur, that the initial financial struggle, it's real. It's not that it doesn't exist. And we're just like, oh yeah, everything's fine. It exists. Okay. Let's be real. It exists. So for me, when I purchased that vehicle, it was the same thing. It was a sense of freedom, and it was a sense of accomplishment as well, because I did something for once on my own. I mean, I still had a little help, I'll be honest, but I was able to actually do it from the place of, I want to do this, not a place of I need to, or I should. It was like, no. I want this for me because I wanted an SUV. I wanted it to have enough space in it because I want to go wherever I want to go, whenever I want to go. And this vehicle also was my first vehicle in, because I was sharing a vehicle with my ex at the time, because that was just the agreement we made. It just literally made sense for, I think, 2 years prior to that. So again, this is my first time having a vehicle in like 2 years. And I'm like, oh, this freedom. And now that I have this space that I have, it's like this adventure mobile, right? Like I've always wanted to create this sense of adventure for myself. And I wanted to go out and explore things and not have to wait and rely on somebody like, oh, when are you home? Can I use your vehicle? Like, oh no, not today. Like I didn't want to live my life that way. So for me to finally get this vehicle, I agree with you. It was 100% a huge sense of freedom. And it was like a weight off my shoulders, a weight off my chest. And I'm like, this is mine. Like, I am so proud of myself. And every time I look at it, I can't help but smile. I'm like, Ruby Rouge, I love you. Yeah, my car's red if you're wondering.
I think that there's so much that we can take from this and we can tie it into how we see ourselves. So again, I already mentioned this idea of materialistic versus actually having our soul desires being met.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people on the outside looking in can listen to our conversation, especially if you don't have a vehicle or if you're struggling right now to pay for your vehicle. And that ego response, that ego reaction of jealousy and your own fear being triggered can pop up. And when we're in that ego space, I think what we end up seeing is materialism, materialistic needs, and saying like maybe someone listening to this right now is saying like, wow, they believe they're worthy because they have a car. And that's actually not what we're saying. Right. And so, yeah, it's totally possible. I think I totally could have been in a space where I would say that as well. And I think this is where it ties in, being the spiritual mentor, I'm always looking for the depth of something and saying, we're not just our physical reality. We are so much more than our physical reality. And so how does having a vehicle actually tie into your soul desires and what you believe is true for your soul path and your soul purpose? And you said buying this vehicle that you own, you needed something that was reliable, but you didn't have to have the top of the line. If you were going from a materialistic point of view, you probably from a very ego space would have said, I wanted the prettiest thing. I wanted the best looking thing. I want it to have all the bells and whistles and all the buttons and all the apps and all the extra things.
And this year's model, like brand spanking new, because just for a quick sec, but like the iPhones, there's always a new iPhone. Oh, I need to get it because it's new. Oh, I need to get this car because it's new. Like same idea.
And when you look at that concept and you dig into it, you're able to understand I'm putting my worth on an external source. But what you and I are saying is our worthiness. Like, I believe we talk about how we're very different. And if you guys listening or watching, go back and listen to last week's episode, you'll see like we are very different and we don't always agree and we don't always get along. But I think one of the things that has really bonded us in our relationship is our soul need. I believe one of my soul truths and one of your soul truths, who we came here to be and how we're meant to express ourselves, is in this idea of freedom and this idea of adventure and exploration, this like need to see more, to experience more, to learn more through life. And that's the value we carry with our car. So even if you had the $3,000 car that only lasted you for 3 years, it's not a material need of I have to get from A to B. It's I want to journey, right? That's what the car at least to me, and I don't know if you would agree, Ange, but It's this soul desire to experience the journey, not get from one spot to the next destination.
I would have to agree with you on that, because all my previous, like, little couple grand cars, they were always an A to B car. Okay, I need something that's going to get me from here to there. So it's like, in a sense, it's almost like you're goal oriented, or so like result oriented, rather than the actual journey that it needed to take you to get there. Whereas now the vehicle that I have, so much different, because now I'm like, oh my goodness, I get to drive in my vehicle. It's mine to get me to where I want to go. But I don't even care if I'm taking the long way, the short way. Like, it's just the concept of me being in the vehicle and having that sense of freedom every single time my hands touch that wheel, every single time my finger turns that switch on. Like, it feels so good. And that's something that you can't buy that. Like, you can't buy that. It's not something that, like, even if it was the top of the line car, okay, sure. Let's just say, for example, it was 100% out of your financial budget, but you just wanted to do it to impress yourself because you want it, because your ego decided that it mattered more that day. Who knows, whatever that reason is. But there's going to most likely be a point where either there's resentment or anxiety or stress that's going to start coming up and saying, like, oh my God, why did I do that? Well, I can't afford it this month. Oh, I didn't even think about in 3 years' time that I'm going to be moving. I'm going to be losing my job. I'm not going to be able to afford it anymore. Oh my gosh. Like, and then all of a sudden the panic starts coming in. But it's because we're so focused on the right now and the end goal. The end goal is to get that new thing. And the right now is, well, I have money right now, so I'll do it. But it's so much more to that, as Syd and I are explaining clearly.
And I'm like chomping at the bit right now, because I like just want to jump in and I say, hi, hello, my name is Sydney. Like, did I not explain my previous car situation? Like, what you just said, Ange, literally explains the car that I had before this one. I was in a financial position where I could afford something. I was in a very ego state of being. And I would never blame my environment for anything, because that is a very victim mindset. I would say that I was strongly influenced by my environment, but I also made the choices that I made. And at that stage of my life, I was very focused on the ego of how can I fulfill my needs? And ego is never fulfilled. So exactly what you're saying, I didn't buy the top of the line vehicle, but I bought a brand new vehicle, or I leased a brand new vehicle. And I was spending money that I could afford at the time, but then I left my job, and I all of a sudden didn't have a job that was paying for my vehicle. Not that the job paid for my vehicle, but I made the money to then pay for my vehicle. And I got to a place where I carried resentment, and I carried bitterness, and I carried frustration towards my past self. And this very much came in a space where I awakened to my spiritual truths. And I had that spiritual awakening. I had the breakdown to the breakthrough moment, realizing the difference between consciousness and being unconscious or subconscious in your decision-making process. And so I looked at my past self with a lot of judgment and a lot of blame and a lot of shame. How could you do this? Why would you make those decisions? Why wouldn't you think about, 3 years in advance if your financial position were to change, right? Like, there's so much judgment and blame that was around my vehicle, even though my vehicle took me on adventures and gave me a sense of freedom in a lot of ways. My energetic attachment to that old vehicle became very rooted in fear and very rooted in worry. Will I receive the money to be able to pay for this? And so my soul truth of adventure and freedom and exploration was no longer being met, because I made the decision to get that vehicle from an ego desire. And like I said, ego's never fulfilled. But what you were just saying, Ange, every single time you put your hands on the steering wheel, that feeling, you can't explain it. That is soul fulfillment.
Yes.
And you are creating that every single time you step into your car, not because of the materialistic quality of the car, but because you made a decision that guided you on your soul path to live out your soul purpose of living a free, adventure-filled life. And so every time you step into that vehicle, you think about that vehicle, you talk about that vehicle, this feeling of fulfillment emanates throughout your entire being.
100%. And the way you were explaining it, I was like, oh my God, it's soul sucking. Like that, those were the words that were coming from my mouth, is that when we come from a place of our ego deciding what we're going to do, meaning that little devil that's speaking on our shoulder, like, oh yeah, you should buy like top of the line for sure. You're going to look so cool. You can like pick up all your friends and your fresh new whip, like all the things. But at the same time, at a certain point, you're going to get to this place where your soul is literally being drained, because where your energy flows, wherever your attention goes. And if you're
tired of trying multiple fad diets and various workout programs, yet still feel like there is nothing working, lacking the consistency and confidence in your own knowledge of what to do in and out of the gym is why those last 10 pounds feel impossible to lose. You need the accountability to remind yourself that this is a lifestyle you're creating, not an end result. Why? Because your happy, healthy life is the result. I'm here to show you how to feel good about your body every single day, and the Fit and Free membership does just that. It's for the woman who needs accountability and a structured program or routine. For only $40 a month, you'll get 8 live recorded workouts with a personal trainer, 1 mindset coaching call, and over 50 plus different workouts to do on your own every single month. Get started by joining the Fit and Free membership today.
And if your attention is focused on, oh my God, how am I going to pay for this? Like, I don't know what I'm going to do now. You're in this place of lack, which then takes away from your soul purpose. So your ego is literally sucking at your soul. And then now all of a sudden, this whole idea of adventure and exploration that you wanted to meet for yourself is no longer met, because the ego overrid the soul. And I'm like just sitting here like, because you lived through it and now you've come out on the other side and you're like, yep, I learned. But at the same time, like, we're here to have that conversation, because it's not just a car at the end of the day. Like, it is sure black and white, but the reason this conversation is not just to say we have a car. Like, there was full intention with how we purchased it, with what we purchased, and why we purchased it. And I think just kind of bringing this back in, because I don't remember what you were saying earlier in the episode, but something kind of just struck within me. And it was this idea of like my purpose. Like, what is my purpose in anything that I do? And it's to find purpose. It's to find purpose. It's to find meaning. It's to find fulfillment. And if I can't, then it just means it's not for me. And that's okay. But it's just important to recognize that that is the reason why I do anything, is it has to mean something to me. And if it doesn't mean anything for me, that's good enough for me, then it's just not good enough for me, period. And like, I'm okay with that now. I'm so okay with that. Whereas beforehand, yeah, I wanted to get that brand new flashy whip, but I had to think realistically. I'm like, is this really where I need to be right now? And you definitely helped me make that decision. So thank you for being honest in the moments that you were.
Yeah, I helped you because my fear was still so strong. I hadn't healed it yet. And so I was like, don't make a decision based out of ego. Don't do it. It's awful. It's the worst thing you could ever do.
I know. I'm like, it'll be fine. Everything's fine. Yeah, right now.
Exactly. And I think ultimately first of all, I just want to point out to the listeners or the viewers on YouTube, did you think that this is where the conversation was going to go when Ange said we're going to talk about our cars today?
Like, right.
And this literally proves why we created this podcast, because the way that you and I, Ange, have conversations is not this surface level, hey, how's your day? What's going on? Mm-hmm. And maybe sometimes if you go back and listen to some of our old episodes, maybe for some reason you might feel like we're not going as deep as we normally would. And it's usually in those times because those times that we're going through the weeds of something.
Mhm.
And when we're really struggling through something, because we are human, we don't have the capacity to go as deep as we can when we're feeling really good. And so
100%.
today's conversation is that reminder that, like, we're here to find the depth in conversation,
Mhm.
to bring meaning. That's what you said. You feel like your purpose is to find purpose, is to find
Yeah.
meaning.
Yeah.
And I think really what this comes down to is, when we're making decisions in life, when we're manifesting something, when we're calling something in, when we're looking for something more than what we currently have, is to really get clear, am I coming from an ego desire, or am I coming from a soul desire? And
Mhm.
you'll know what the answer is to that question. And it really comes back to this idea of, how are you choosing to live your life? Are you choosing to live your life on the surface, which is
Mhm.
very black and white, like you said, Ange? Or are you choosing to go deeper, which is very gray, which I believe, for me, and I think everyone can determine what it means to them, but I believe that's the definition of spirituality. It's this gray space. There is no
Mhm.
logic. There is no rational
Mhm.
reasoning. It's uncovering what your beliefs are as who you are. And we're allowed to have different beliefs. We're allowed to see things differently.
I agree. And you know what? I'm totally gonna tie in this idea of gray space, because holy crap, this is so relevant in my life, like more specifically at work. But it's this idea of gray area. Everyone, the general population hates the idea of gray area, because then they don't see it as black or white. But for me, I see gray area as a good thing. Why? Because it's an opportunity for us to make a shift, for there to no longer be gray area. Because yeah, there's a good thing to have gray area in our life, but there's also a good time when we don't really need gray areas. But whenever there is, it's not that it's a bad thing. Oh my God, there's so much gray area. It's not a bad thing. It just means, okay, well, where do we need to shift our focus so that way you can see things a lot more clearer? Because maybe it's the individual themselves that are not clear with this gray area, or maybe us as a company are not clear in this gray area. So where can we take this as that one step further to provide more clarity? And again, gray area, it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. And how you explain it in regards to spirituality, yeah, I agree with you 100%, because it's the pieces, I should say, in between the black and the white. Because however we see things, it's not always for how we see things, because when we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. The thing itself didn't change. That's the gray area, right? Black and white is the thing. Whereas we're talking about how we look at it, or how we see it, how we perceive it all, it can change as we shift our own perspective. When we shift our perspectives, that's where more gray area is then found. So more opportunities to recreate meaning, more opportunities to find new purpose. So it's more soul fulfilling, or more fulfilling in general, not even soul fulfilling, but if we're talking from a business standpoint, more black and white. But the more gray areas we see, it's a better chance for us to grow. And yeah, I don't know if that kind of resonated with you, but I wanted to point that out.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that this is, in conversation, where you broaden your perspective and where you gain more insights. Because the way that I've seen black and white for the last few years of my life is, it says that there's a right and there's a wrong. And I don't believe that's true.
Yeah.
Because it's basically saying that there's someone out there in the world that's living the wrong way. If they
Yeah.
choose this and I chose that, then they're wrong, I'm right. And to me, that is ego. That is saying there's a hierarchy of power, and anybody that says differently than me is wrong. So I'm more powerful than them. I think in the gray area, it's all a scale, exactly as you're saying. If black's on one end and white's on the other area, gray is everything in between. You can get to the spot that is very close to black or very close to white, but you're not pushing over into that definite edge because you're living from an open-minded space. And you're saying, when I gain new information, when I gain more experiences, when I hear somebody else's perspective, I'm allowing myself to shift because there is no right or wrong. There's simply openness and different views and different lights. And I think that's where our growth lies.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed. It's almost like we are choosing to live in the gray area, knowing that nothing is definite, because not even talking about like human design. I'm trying to find like the right word. I'm sure you'll find it once I explain myself, but it's to show that there is so much potential, that everything that we do, think, and say is limitless. If we are saying things are black and white, then that means that we're putting a cap on what is possible. Let's be freaking real. There is so much possibility. There is so much potential, and there are so many different ways of us receiving it. So if we're thinking that it's just this way or that way, black or white, then we're limiting our own beliefs. We're limiting our own reality. And we are creating the inability for us to see something different, because we are choosing to suppress our perception based off of what society says we should say or should think or should see.
Damn, girl. Like, that is, yes.
Yeah.
I have nothing to add. Literally. Like the physical world that we live in is so limiting, because we're basically saying that the only thing that can be created is something that I've already seen, something I've already touched, something I've already witnessed, something I've already experienced. So we're basically saying our future is actually dependent on our past. And that is the furthest thing from the truth. Like, 100%. Look at all of, I want to say it, Albert Einstein. I heard something, or I read something, that when he came up with a lot of his inventions, he created this practice. I'm pretty sure it was Albert Einstein. He created this practice that I would call meditation. And he would basically sit in a chair, and he'd have these two weighted balls that he would like rotate in his hand. And the moment that one of the balls would drop out of his hands, he's basically he's falling asleep basically in this process. But the moment that one of the balls would drop out of his hands, he'd wake up and he'd pull whatever was flowing through his mind. He'd pull the idea, the inspiration, the thought that had just popped up in his mind. And that's where a lot of his inventions came from, that practice of meditating. And to me, that was him being open to receiving limitless ideas from something that had never been created before in his life. And that's the gray area. That's what we're saying, is we can fall into fear, and it's very limiting, because fear comes from our past experiences. Hence my vehicle, right? I had to heal the fear that I was carrying around my vehicle, the worry, the doubt, the pain that I had experienced, in order to get to a place where I leaned more into my faith. And I said, what if it got to be easy? What if a vehicle came into my life that I could afford, and everything was covered and everything was paid for, and it was the exact vehicle that I wanted, so I could continue to adventure and have that sense of freedom? And I tapped into that soul desire. Again, being the spiritual mentor, I said, universe, creator, God, source, spirit, use whatever name you want to use. And I said, let it happen. Let it come to me. There was more work that I had to do in that process, but that's the idea of manifestation and trusting that it could happen. And it did. It did. And if I stayed limited in that black and white perspective of if this is what I experienced in the past, then it must be what I have to experience in the future. Then I would not be in this position today, in this vehicle, in this situation. I would still be worried about paying for my vehicle, doubting my ability to make the money, and being frustrated and judgmental and shaming my past self for choices that I made. But today I'm saying, no, I chose to live in the gray area. I chose to see life from a limitless perspective.
100%. And I think having that willingness to understand that gray is okay, it allows you to shift your perspective that much easier than you ever thought possible before, because there's this idea, and it's true. We are what we know. So if we only know certain things, we're going to do things, we're going to think things, we're going to say things based off of what we know. But when we change what we know, we change who we are. So if we are opening ourselves up to the idea of receiving a different perception, hearing somebody's opinion without having our ego come forward and say, well, that's wrong. Why is it wrong? They lived a completely different life than you. Why can't you just listen to them and just say, oh, cool. Now I understood where you're coming from. I'm going to add this into my library. When you change what you know, you change who you are. And especially if you're on this journey of becoming a better version of yourself, especially if you're on this journey of incorporating the self-development and incorporating this personal development for yourself to grow, then again, you need to understand that gray is good. Because if there is only black and there is only white, then why should we even grow in the first place? Because growing is to show us that there is so much potential, so much things out there, so many possibilities that are just so limitless. So if we're on this personal journey and we're on this idea of self-development and we're not willing to see that gray area, then maybe reevaluate the meaning as to why you even came here in the first place. Is it just so you can see things more definite? Because if that's so, I hate to break it to you, but you are 100% on the wrong path. And that's okay. That's okay. But just regroup from that position to figure out what matters to you most and where are you trying to go? What are you trying to do? What are you trying to create in your life? And if you can't find the meaning and the purpose as to why, then maybe it's a good time to find it. Because if without it, it's going to seem very limiting.
Yeah, I think that really hits the nail on the head. And I think it really comes back to that space of like what you were saying, Ange, if you're here to find the definite answer, you're in the wrong space. Because I think one of the things that you and I really bring into this podcast, but also bring into our personal lives, is this idea that nothing is definite, right? And like, I would encourage someone to challenge what I say, not in a space of saying you're wrong, I'm right, but to challenge my own perspective and to bring in different viewpoints, because that's how I grow. Right. And same with you, Ange. It's why we challenge each other, not in a sense of like, again, you're wrong, I'm right, but in a sense of, oh, this is the way that I've seen it. But as I'm seeing it from your view, I'm gaining a whole new perspective.
100%. And I want to like kind of pause this convo, but I just want to point this idea before we go into the card reading, because it's just so good. So, okay, ever remember in like grade school, and I say grade school, at least they did it in my school, or maybe at some point in your life, you've ever seen this like photo and it's this picture and it's like, what do you see? And it's like, oh, I don't see anything. I just see squiggles. I just see lines. Oh, I see a girl. There's a girl. Oh, wait, it's upside down. There's a man on the other side of it. Oh, there's this too. It's because we're opening ourselves up to the idea is that there's more than what we can just see. There's so much more on that paper than just squiggle lines. And if we're not able to see those squiggle lines, I feel like this might be a place for those that have this idea of there are limits. There are things that are black and there are things that are white. Because if we can see it, that there's so many different shapes and so many different pictures from this one little thing, those are the people that have this limitless thought process, this idea of anything's possible. So if you've looked or haven't looked at one of those photos, I highly encourage you to just do a quick little Google search on, I don't even know what I would call it, like the picture that looks like other things. I don't know, but
It's so funny you say that though, because on Facebook, I think it was yesterday, like I saw somebody post one of those photos and it was like,
Oh,
what
that's
can you
hilarious.
see? Or like it had numbers like hidden. And it's like, yeah, I think that was a great way to kind of wrap it up, because
Mhm.
I don't think either of us would be here in our positions with our vehicles and talking about this idea of fulfillment and
Mhm.
experiencing our soul purpose and how our vehicles help us on that path if we didn't believe that life is limitless. You're on your spiritual journey, desiring to create a deeper connection with your inner spirit and your soul path. But you feel lost in how to create more joy and calmness through life's challenges. In the meditation membership, you will feel seen for who you are and understood in a way that feels empowering and uplifting, alongside a community of like-minded beings. For only $33 per month, you will get 2 live calls filled with spiritual lessons, open-minded conversation, and powerful guided meditations. Join the meditation membership for more connection and support as you grow into the best version of you. And
100%.
maybe we as humans are limited in the span of our lives in saying like we all were born and then we die, but I don't believe that we're humans first and foremost. I believe that we're spirits first and foremost. And in that concept, my belief proves to me that there is this limitless energy that is always part of
Yes.
us. So like
Oh,
you
I love
said,
that.
we could keep talking and maybe we'll bring this conversation into a future podcast. But let's jump into a card reading and just maybe ask for
Yes.
a little bit more guidance. And, you know, what do we need to know in terms of like soul purpose and soul fulfillment and those soul truths and finding that sense of fulfillment? Because that's what we were talking about with our vehicles and how they help us in that process. So what do we need to know when it comes to soul purpose? What do we need to know? My hands are kind of cold right now, so like shuffling is a little tricky. There we go.
I should have asked you, like, how are you doing right now? Because I know you were seeing your breath earlier.
I'm doing really well. Just my hands are cold.
Okay,
Just my hands are cold, but I'm doing well. Okay, so we've got 3 cards that came forward, which is kind of fun because for a little while we've just been getting 1 card, I believe. So the first one that flew out first on its own, and remember I asked, like, what do we need to know when it comes to soul purpose? And of course, like I said at the beginning of this conversation, I never remember exactly what I say. So maybe that question might be a little bit different than what I actually said, but this idea of soul purpose. The card is Dove, Serenity, slow down, pause, and breathe. Oh, that's not going to focus. Sorry.
Oh, that's
like
hilarious.
if you're looking on
There you go.
YouTube, yeah,
Keep
sorry,
it
I
like
blurred.
in front of your face. I think it should work. Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Okay. Dove, serenity, slow down, pause, and breathe. We were talking about ego and soul and the difference between ego desires and soul desires. And I posed that question to you earlier in this conversation. I said, you'll know the difference. And if you're sitting there saying, I don't know, how do I know? How do I know? That's exactly what Dove is saying. Dove is saying, if your ego is quick and says like, we got to go this way, hurry, rush, go, go, go. And it's very pressure filled and stressed filled. That is ego. If you're able to calm yourself down, to slow down, to pause, to breathe deeply, and the thing that is calling on you, the thing that you know to be true, that is your soul, right? So really kind of having that space to slow down and to sit with the truth, the message, the clarity, the question, your soul will bring you an answer. If you're rushing, stressing, needing to move quickly, you are coming from an ego space and it's not connected with your purpose. Hawk, focus, choose your priorities and eliminate all distractions.
Oh,
that's perfect. That is absolutely perfect, right? It's literally about taking the time to sit with yourself and ask yourself, is this connected with my values? Is this aligned with where I want to go, who I want to be? Like if you want to follow your soul path and you want to live out your soul purpose, you have to ask yourself some really challenging questions, and you have to be willing to sit in that space of unknown, in that space of uncertainty, right? That's okay. If you don't know, if you're not certain, that's okay, right? It takes time. We're ever evolving. We're constantly shifting and changing. Your purpose is allowed to shift and change as well, right? But you have to get clear on what your priorities are, and you have to be willing to eliminate those distractions. Last card, koala, empathy, speak less and listen more. If your mind is constantly go, 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 how are you ever going to hear your soul? How are you ever going to hear the innate knowings that you carry, right? Your mind is not your soul. So if it's just go, 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 then you're not actually listening to your soul truths, and you're not actually allowing the space for your soul to speak through you. So amazing cards and great guidance for you to get clearer on your soul purpose.
Absolutely. Those all rang true to me. I think the one that stood out the most for me anyways, was dove. And the last one, koala, because I think koala more so than dove, only this idea of me always having constant like EDM music going on in my mind. And I don't remember if I said it on the podcast or if I said it to you, but lately it really has been dwindling. And it's not that it's like a bad thing, but I'm in this space where I see things a lot clearer. I'm like, okay, yeah, I can just say yes in this moment, and I can just do things in that moment. But I know that feeling is going to come forward, that I'm going to regret it. I'm going to resent myself, and then the guilt's going to bring on. So how can I just flow and let out what's on my mind so it's more clear from why I'm doing it? So coming more from the soul rather than just doing things to do things. So yeah, that's what
I love that. I love that so much, because that's literally the definition of awareness and creating conscious choice. And when we're in that space of awareness and being able to have conscious choice, that is how we live from our soul. That is how we live our soul truths. So absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you for your wonderful ongoing guidance. We all love it. And I'm speaking for all of us.
Yes. I love it too. It really it reaffirms a lot of things for me right now. You know, I had a couple of days earlier this week where I was just really stuck in my own challenges and feeling really weighed down by the heavy weight of this world, of my own experiences, of my ego. And so these reminders really bring in that limitless energy and that reminder that anything is possible. Don't pressure yourself into believing it has to be one way or another way. So really hope that our conversation today has brought a new perspective to you listening or viewing this episode. I would encourage you to kind of dig a little bit deeper for yourself. You know, how do you value the material things in your life? And is it simply just an egotistical, materialistic connection, attachment that you've created? Or is there a soul desire, a soul need that is being met through your connection with that physical object or that physical thing in your life? If you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to leave it a rating or review wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, consider subscribing, give the video a like, comment below, let us know your thoughts. On YouTube, you can also turn the notifications on so you're notified every single time we come out with a new episode. Thank you so much for choosing to be part of our community and for choosing to listen to this episode. We cannot wait to come at you next week with a whole new episode. But until then, we are sending you so much love, light, courage, and a willingness to step out of your comfort zone and pursue your soul purpose. Bye, everyone.
Yes. Bye.